Today, we are talking about finding peace and not fixing everything all at once, but taking just one step at a time, because sometimes that's all we can do, and that has to be enough. My name is Sonia, and I'm your host today, and I am with my co host, Melody. Hey,
Uh,
Melody.
hey,
Mhm. Hey, I wanted to tell you really quick before we start diving in that this recording is our 20th episode.
oh
So,
wow,
yeah.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so happy 20th episode.
yeah,
It's been
definitely.
fun recording with you.
Me, yes.
I thought this topic was super important because we do find a lot of our clients that come to us are in some amount of pain and grief, and they're just looking for peace. And
Hmm.
sometimes they're looking for a quick solution, like, give me the steps, tell me what I need to do to feel better. And sometimes there's nothing that you can do. You have to sit in that peace. And so I thought that that was important to talk about based off of some of the clients that we've had lately.
Yeah. So yesterday I was talking to a woman, and she definitely has a lot of trauma from her past. And so I was just asking her some questions, like trying to discover what the core wounds were in the conversation. And so I'm asking her to rate some things 1 to 10 and all of that. And we get halfway through the list, and she just breaks down crying. Right. And she said, I'm sorry. I can't do this right now. And I was like, it's okay. Like, look, we can slow it down. We have nothing but time. We're going to have other sessions. We don't have to get through all this list right now. And after a few seconds, she just cried for a second. And then she was like, okay, I'm ready. And I was like, no, it's okay. Like, we're going to pump the brakes on this. We're just going to slow it down. You don't have to force yourself through this. Some of the stuff that we're talking about is very emotionally taxing, right? You're talking about your past, you're talking about, all the pain that you feel right now in this moment. And we don't have to fast forward through this. And sometimes it's okay just to sit there, pause your life, right? And just cry, just be in that moment. You don't have to fast forward to anything. And one of the things that she said is her desire more than anything, because she said, I just feel like there's so much chaos in my brain all the time, all these thoughts and feelings and everything, they're just spiraling around. And she was like, I just want to feel peace. And I told her, sometimes you just have to pump the brakes and just take one little step, one little minor step right now, and that can create the environment where you move into peace.
Yeah, as you're saying all of that, and as I'm thinking just about all the different personality types, and even thinking about myself, and I'm very solution oriented, and so I would have a really hard time with that because I'm like, give me the book to read, give me the steps
Mhm,
to take, like, let's just like action steps, like, just tell
mhm,
me what to do, like, let's get to the end point.
mhm,
And you're right, it's so important to just sometimes sit in it and
mhm,
not rush the process.
mhm.
But as we're talking about this, I'm like, yeah, I'd be one of those people that would want to rush the process.
Yeah,
Get
yeah,
me through this, like, just tell me what to do.
yeah. And it's because we're creatures of pleasure, not pain, right? And I think it's great that you, me, this client, whatever, want to take steps. You don't want to stay stuck in that place. So the steps are good, but also is sitting, it's good to just kind of sit in that, because there's things that you learn when you're in pain that you don't learn any other time in life. Right.
Yeah.
And I know people, they want to cut people out because they're in pain. They want to isolate because they're in pain, and all of that. But run away, escape, whatever, they want to do a lot of different things to get out of pain. But sometimes just sitting in that, right? Now, not letting that pain control your actions and maybe move you to self-harm or anything like that. So sometimes you might need a guide there with you to kind of support you and keep your mindset in the right place. But there's something to be learned when you're just sitting kind of in the pain and allowing yourself to feel what you're feeling.
Yeah. Well, and because if you don't do that, you're just, it's going to resurface at some point. So if you try to ignore it, move past it and not sit in it, it will come back up. And
Right.
it's much better to sit in it, deal
Mhm.
with it, don't stay there too long.
Mhm.
But also, helps to talk to somebody to work through, just like you did with the woman yesterday.
Yeah. And so there's many times when I've told clients, you have to deal with your pain or your pain's going to deal with you.
Mhm.
But one of the steps too dealing with your pain is kind of sitting with it for a little while. But you're right, you can't set up camp there because then you'll move into the victimhood. Like, poor pitiful me, this always happens to me. Why am I always the victim? And that's not a good place to be either.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I've seen a family member do that. And I mean, here we are like 10, 12 years out, and it's still
mhm,
very much in the victimhood mentality and can't move past it. And it pains me
right,
to see my loved one in that place, because I do want them to move on. Like, there
right,
is life outside of the darkness and your
right.
pain.
Absolutely. Definitely, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so another little tiny step that you can take is breathe on purpose. And I'm going to tell you why this is so funny. I actually learned this from the dog whisperer. Okay.
Really?
So he, like, if you watch a lot of episodes, and listen, I used to be his prodigy. He didn't know that. But, I watched him a lot, when he first came out. I guess it was in the 2000s, or, maybe the 2010s. I'm not really sure. Can't remember. But I would watch him interact with the dogs. And many times before he was about to engage with the dog, he'd go, yeah, and he said because what that does is it changes, your body chemistry, because they pick up on what you're feeling. They pick up on your energy. And so I found myself doing that with my dog, right? Because I'm supposed to be the leader, and at that time I had a female dog, and she was supposed to follow, right? But I remember walking her on the leash, and she's pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling, and I learned through watching him, and trying to mimic what he was doing. And I never became the professional like he did, but I got pretty good with her. But he would often do that. And so I found myself in other areas of my life when I was feeling stress or anxiety or whatever, I would just do, and I felt like it would reset the chemistry, in my brain. And Layla is at band camp this week, and she had to audition, and she was super nervous. I could see it, like, she plays the clarinet, and I could see her little hands shaking while she's trying to play the notes. And I said, "Hey, baby, just stop. Just take a deep breath in and
Mm.
exhale." And so she did that a few times, and I could just see kind of just that relaxation, right? That, okay, I feel better. She did amp herself up again, but but in that moment she kind of calmed down and took some deep breaths, and she felt better, because your nervous system starts to reset whenever you do that.
Yeah. So Jefferson Fisher in his book, and you've heard me talk about it before, but because I love the book, but
Mhm,
he talks about breath work, and
mhm,
he talks about when you're going into a conversation and commanding the conversation, the very first thing you should do is take a deep breath. Like, those are
mhm,
your first words,
mhm,
is to take a
mhm,
deep breath.
mhm,
And it helps regulate you. It helps you even like pause and not say, maybe
mhm,
help you not say what you want to say, but come up
mhm.
with something different. And
Right.
so I think that
I
is so.
remember watching him on a podcast, and he was saying that. He was like, we almost start answering the question before the question is out. And he said, you really do change the dynamic in the room when you just take a deep breath and then answer the question.
Yeah, absolutely. It does help so much. And I think just breath work in general, I actually did breath work yesterday, and it was because I had the worst headache. And I was like, oh
Mhm,
my gosh, I just felt so much stress and
mhm,
tension, and it was really frustrating. Like, I was super frustrated by
mhm,
it. But then I sat still for like 30 minutes and concentrated on my breath. And I found a point where I was like, well, maybe if I just listen to some music, or if I,
mhm.
watch TV for 30 minutes just to get my mind off of it. But I'm like, no, I need silence, and I just need to do breath work.
Right. You didn't want the escape or the distraction. You wanted just to sit with it.
I did.
What
I
we
did.
talk about. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, our next point is, it's so important that when you are feeling a certain way because of this pain that you're dealing with, is to name those feelings, and just to be very self-aware of what's going on. And you've talked about journaling a lot, but when I'm thinking about like naming this feeling, it's so important to write it down. Like, I am angry, I'm sad, I'm
Mhm,
disappointed, like all of
mhm,
the things. And then journal it out why you're feeling the way that you are. It helps
mhm.
give you perspective and clarity on that exact thing that you're dealing with.
Yeah. More importantly, it creates the the environment where you're not in denial about what you're feeling.
Yeah.
In society today, and even, I think more for men than for women, it's like shove down your feelings, shove down your feelings, shove down your feelings. And listen, I think there's appropriate time to show your feelings and there's appropriate time where you don't, right?
Right.
But you want to sit with those and not deny, oh, I'm angry, or not deny that, I'm frustrated. Even if, like, sometimes we're frustrated or angry about things and we're like, I probably shouldn't be frustrated or angry about this, but I am, right? The more you try to say, oh, well, I need to be a better person, or I need to take the high road or whatever, and deny what you're feeling, all you're doing is actually feeding that negative feeling. So you have to go back and say, hey, yeah, like, I am pissed off about this, you know, even if it's not right, even if I shouldn't, as a Christian, be mad about something, I am. And I think it's okay to do that. It's just, you don't want to allow those emotions, the negative emotions, to drive behavior. Right.
Mhm.
And so if you're mindful of that, and the more you sit with it and just think it through, again, sitting in that moment, just sitting in it, right? It creates the environment where your brain will begin to resolve the issue. And I can't tell you how many times I have felt something and, been crying or been angry or felt like I needed to do something right away. I didn't do something. Well, there's been many times that I did do things right away, but I have learned in my 50 years of age not to do that. But I remember, especially in high crisis, I remember saying, you know what? I'm going to get a good night's sleep tonight. I'm going to eat well, and tomorrow I will feel better. And every single time, that was the truth, because I just needed a little time to process the emotion. Right?
Yeah.
If I would have acted or denied or tried to escape whatever I was feeling, then I may have not had that outcome. But the more I just said, I'm going to sleep good tonight, I'm going to eat good, and I'll feel fine in the morning, I actually did.
Yeah. So good. Yeah. I completely agree. All right. And the next step is self-care, but I want to be careful because I don't want to, say, go take a bath or
Mhm.
which is, I'm not saying that that's wrong,
Right.
but I think that we also have to be really careful with self-care, that we really focus not necessarily on ourselves in like a selfish manner, but recognizing, yes, to take care of yourself, but there's definitely ways that you can do that. And sometimes that means, because we're Christians, that means spending time with Jesus. Like, that's self-care too.
Oh, absolutely. It absolutely is. And I've seen it in other clients. I know I experienced it with me. If sometimes just turning on worship music,
Yeah.
really would reset my mindset, and it helps me push in to the one that could really help me with my circumstances,
Yeah. Yeah.
and fix me. I couldn't control anyone else, and if there was a person that was hurting me, that's between God and that person. I can't
Mhm.
control that, but there would be this reset in my mind and a fresh new perspective. One of the books in the Bible that I love so much is Psalms, because I felt like when I was reading those things, I would be like, yes, this is exactly what I'm feeling. Like, I'm upset at my enemy or whatever. Or, it's good for me that I'm afflicted because I learn you about the Lord, And so those different things really did speak to my spirit. My other favorite one is Proverbs, and that's just because I need wisdom. But in those times when I was like desperate for something, I would read Psalms and I would say, okay, Lord, if you hear David's prayers, you can hear mine too, you know.
Mm.
And yeah, it's very powerful.
Yeah. And so again, I'm not saying don't take a walk, don't, go get your nails done or take a bath or anything like that. But those is that going to help you? And, yes, absolutely, in various ways, but it's more about being connected to
Mhm.
yourself, but how you're going to connect to yourself is through Jesus.
Right, absolutely. I would like to mention, I remember listening to Gary Brecka speak one time, and he was saying that, if you're hungry for a snack that's not healthy, if you do 10 squats, it actually changes that. It can create the environment where you can overcome the craving or whatever. But I actually started applying it to a lot of things. If I felt stressed, I would do the squats or whatever, because endorphins get released whenever you're doing that, and it would help. Sometimes it wasn't just 10 I needed to do. Maybe I needed to do 25 or something like that, but it did help with some of that. So yes, that's self-care too. Of course, I agree with you 100%. The best self-care is time with Jesus.
Yeah. All right. And our last and final point is just to remind yourself to let go of the pressure to be
Mhm,
okay. And, healing takes time, just like you were talking
mhm,
about with that woman.
mhm,
It does take time. It's a good reminder for myself that, I can't just get into solution mode and fix, fix,
mhm,
fix.
mhm,
But your peace is going to come when you don't rush through everything,
mhm. Yeah.
and you just take the time and you say one step at a time. Sometimes, and I've heard clients say, Sonia, right now I'm taking it 1 minute
Mhm,
at a time.
mhm. As a coach, I love when clients get to that place. I'm working with a lady right now, and she's very similar to me in many ways. And, I kind of see myself years ago. And, she's kind of wound kind of tight. She's very good at what she does. She's very meticulous, very orderly, very organized type person. And she said, I feel like I'm the one that has to solve everybody's problems.
Mhm.
And and then when it goes wrong, they blame me. And I was like, okay, because you're trying to solve their problems, like they've got to figure that out.
Yeah.
Right. And her kids are getting older, and all of that. And she's just been in this turmoil, and she's had friction with her kids and her spouse, and all that kind of thing. And finally she's got to the point where I just can't do this anymore. And I encouraged her to read the book by Mel Robbins, Let Them. And
Mhm.
she texted me yesterday, and she was like, this is exactly the book I needed. Right. And so I was talking to her a couple of nights ago, and she said, I just feel like my brain has shifted, because I told her, I was like, you have a false sense of control over this, and you are making, like, if she didn't show up for her kids in a certain way, and listen, it really was, some of the demands that they had of her were not realistic, right?
Yeah.
Is she capable? She's absolutely capable, right? But just because you can doesn't mean that you should, right? And so I'd been encouraging her just kind of let go, just let go of control, let go and all that. And so I asked her the other day, so how do you feel not trying to control that anymore? And she said, I feel great. I
Mm,
feel just letting go,
yeah.
choosing to take a different route, to focus on some of those self-care, self-improvement, self-healing
Mhm.
things. Like, I feel so much better. Has my circumstances changed? Not really. They really haven't changed. But I have changed because I've decided not to hold on so tight.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Well, if this spoke to you in any way today and you want something practical to walk you through this season, we have created a guide that's called When the Pain is Too Much. And it's just filled with simple steps, some actions that you can take today, just to help you breathe and calm your mind, and also give you some hope. And so I will link it in the show notes. It's completely free. And we just hope that it does give you a little sense of peace and something that you can hold on to.